Hello, I am Angela Anand. I am founder, president of South Asian Women's Network, and network is devoted to highlighting positive contribution of Indian women and working with women from all walks of life. We have executive committee members as well as supporters and advisors today, and they will be sharing their thoughts with you.
Welcome everyone. Myself, Dr. Shukrit Mukherjee.
My name is Rajeshwari Kulkarni.
Linda Darden. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist.
All the board members and the advisory committee.
Thank you so much for having me, Ms. Anand, and everyone here.
My name is Indrani Davuluri, and I am a guru and a performer of Bharatanatyam.
I'm Sudha Kandapu.
To be active and independent and also in the community.
Thank you, everyone. We're looking forward to the convention. We are responsible or leading on representation and equality.
They say diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Good afternoon. My name is Aruna Miller, and I am excited to be the moderator today. Joining me are AAPI trailblazers who have paved a new path, one that is more inclusive, one where we need to belong. But first, let me thank the Asian American Unity Coalition, the National Civic Leadership Forum, and all of the AAPI organization who have come together to create a platform in which we may learn from each other to build trust so that our community will be strong through unity. A big shout out to our technical team, including Sarah, Josh, Molly, and all of the others who make our virtual lives a little bit more real. A special thank you to Angela Anand, a fearless and compassionate leader and the founder of the South Asian Women's Network, who is sponsoring today's panel. And finally, thank you to everyone who have joined us throughout the nation for the Unity Through Inclusion panel discussion. So let's get started with some of the most influential AAPI leaders in the Washington, D.C. region. Maryland State Senator Susan Lee, Virginia State Senator Ghazala Hashmi, Virginia State Delegate Mark Keem, Virginia State Delegate Suhas Subramaniam, and Paul Tiao, co-founder and executive director of the Asian American Action Fund. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. Now, I know the audience is so excited to learn more about each of you. So the first question is going to be if you could share more about what you do, what your role is, and what is your personal journey that led you to be here today. Let me start first with Senator Susan Lee, who is the first Asian American elected to the Maryland State Senate and was the first Asian American woman and the first Chinese American to be elected to the Maryland legislature.
Hello, everybody. I'm so honored and privileged to be part of this panel with these distinguished panelists and my colleagues across the the Potomac River. But it's so wonderful to see former Delegate Aruna Miller again. She's a wonderful leader, and she brings people together, and I'm so honored to be here. And also my dear friend, Angela Anand. It's great to see you again. Thank you for your leadership on behalf of our country and on behalf of women too. Just as Aruna had said, I'm Maryland State Senator Susan Lee, and in the Maryland State Senate, I serve as what they call a majority whip. I was elected to the Senate in 2014 after serving 13 years in the Maryland House of Delegates. And it was such a great journey. I thought when I got elected, I went to heaven. because I was active in the community, but now I could do this at the table and actually pass laws that help people. I just, as my background, I am the first, we were the first, I guess, in this, I guess we beat Virginia in creating what we call the Legislative Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus. And I was very proud to be the first chairman and one of the co-founders, along with Delegate Aruna Miller. Being elected, before I was elected, I was also an attorney in private practice and in the public sector, including being an attorney with the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights in the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I was also active in helping our AAPI community get empowered in all aspects of life, particularly in politics, because I thought that's important to empower our community. And also prior to being elected, I was in leadership positions in numerous organizations like the NAACP, Women's and Civil Rights and AAPI organizations. And along with former Transportation Secretary Norm Mineta, I co-founded and was a former board member of the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies, which was originally named the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus Institute, or what they call CAPACI. I think Mark Kim remembers that. I was one of the founders and the first chairman of the Coalition of Asian Pacific American Democrats of Maryland. And in the Maryland General Assembly, I've worked on bills to pass things to fight domestic violence, sexual assault, human labor, trafficking, child and senior abuse, identity theft, cyber crimes, and also, importantly, to promote immigrant and civil rights and science, technology, cybersecurity, and empower women, children, and families. And I was particularly proud to have authored and led passage of one of my bills called the Maryland Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, which is now one of the strongest pay equity laws in the country, and the Anti-Exploitation Act, which is the first labor trafficking law we've ever had, the True Freedom Act to help human trafficking victims, and numerous laws to fight identity theft and cyber attacks. And just this recently, I was the sponsor of a law to require background checks on the sale of long guns and shotguns to protect our families and to protect our kids and protect everybody. And this year, I was able to pass the first ever law in Maryland to deter and fight something called ransomware, which I think a lot of you know what that is. But most importantly, I look forward to partnering and working with all the advocates and those who are watching today, and with different diverse communities, but particularly with the AAPI organization and leaders to make this a better world for all our different communities. And I hope that's short enough, and I hope that I didn't go over my time. I thank you, Verna.
Senator Lee, thank you so much for your leadership, and thank you for sharing all the incredible ways that you make life better, not just for our AAPI community, but those all across the state of Maryland. Not just that, but hopefully other legislators will pick up on the incredible legislations that you've been author of, and hopefully do the same thing in their own states. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being such a good friend as well. Now we're going to move on to another first. Virginia Senator Ghazala Hashmi, the first Indian American to be elected to the Virginia State Senate, and the first Muslim woman ever to be elected to the Virginia General Assembly. Senator?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much, Aruna. And I really want to thank the South Asian Women's Network for hosting this panel. I'm really honored to join this distinguished group. And just a little bit about myself. I am representing the 10th Senatorial District in Virginia, which covers a good part of the city of Richmond, as well as its suburbs and surrounding local county. And this is my first term in office. I was elected in November 2019, and I am acclimating myself to government work, but really my background is in higher education. I spent 30 years working as a college professor and then as an administrator in the colleges and universities in the Richmond area. The last 20 years was spent in a community college here in the Richmond area. And that's really where a good bit of my interest and passion has emerged. My focus of work is around issues of higher education, workforce development, and the needs to support so many people who are seeking to advance and assist their own families through education and attainment of degrees and credentials. For 20 years, I saw so many of my students struggling with basic issues and not having the kind of support and resources that I knew that our state government could provide. And I knew I would be able to work in this area and hopefully pass legislation and support the families in my communities who I saw struggling. But really my critical motivation to run for office was in 2017 with the election of Donald Trump and the start of the Trump administration. As all of us well remember, one of the very first acts of that administration was to create a Muslim ban and to highlight basically a way of discrimination on the basis of faith. And this kind of discriminatory policy runs counter to everything that we hold dear as American democracy and the values that we are all very much committed to. And so I knew at that point that I had a responsibility to speak out. I had a responsibility to take action. And I really had a responsibility to run for office. While we have many, many wonderful allies, I think each of our diverse communities has a responsibility to represent itself and to do everything that we can to speak out against policies that may inflict harm on communities and on people that we care so deeply about. And so I'm truly honored to be in the Virginia Senate and honored to serve in this capacity. Thank you, Aruna.
Senator Hashmi, thank you. Thank you for taking the responsibility to run for office, because it's not an easy thing to do, but you did it. And because of you and so many others that we're going to hear from shortly here, I believe the Virginia General Assembly, first time, is now Democratic led, right? So thank you for that. So now we're going to move on to yet another first, which is our friend Delegate Mark Kim, who became the first Asian-born immigrant elected to any state office in Virginia. And Delegate Kim, we just want to say thank you so much for making us a part of your family weekend. We know that you're visiting your daughter in college, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be joining us today.
Thank you, Delegate Miller. It's so good to see you again. We spent a lot of time together the last few years, and I want to honor you for your incredible trailblazing public service as well. And to all my friends who are on this call, I know Senator Lee just heard from Senator Hashmi from my state, and you'll hear from my rising star in Virginia, Subramaniam, and my good friend Paul Chow, with whom I can share many, many, many nights and days of stories of what we've done together in the last 30 odd years. But it's good to see all of you. Thank you, Angela, for organizing it, and for all those who are participating online and those that spoke before our panel and those that will be coming afterwards. I'm so glad that you're doing this. I love the idea of us as AAPIs, as immigrants, as new Americans, as people that are of different backgrounds coming together in unity, looking for common ground. Because if there's one thing that the last 4 years have taught us in America, it is that the ideals of unity, liberty, democracy, justice, equal rights, all these things that we hold dear to our hearts, that we aspire to every day from the Constitution on down, all those things are just pure meaningless words if we don't put action behind it. And as much as I love this nation, and as much as I stand for everything that this country fights for, the reality is it's led by human beings, not by ideals. And so if we have the right group of people that are leading us, then things can really work out. And we've had great periods of unity in our country. But when you have the wrong people with the wrong agenda and a wrong perspective on what this country ought to be, then we quickly divide, we quickly fight, and we end up creating these divisions and isolations and problems that we're now facing. And so it is more crucial than ever before that we as Americans who hold these ideals to our heart, that we all do our part and step up and do our own way to bring our country together, united as one nation with all the diversity that we want to aspire to. So the reason why I ran for office and the reason why I have the honor of serving in the House of Delegates in Virginia is because my family, like many of your families, took that chance. They were living in a country that didn't offer them, and they didn't even promise these things. In fact, most of them were just clearly said, you know, our country is a autocracy, a dictatorship, a fascist, and that's all there is. And we are communists, whatever it might be. And we will do things the way we want. And if you live here, depending on what caste you're born into, depending on what race or gender or religion you're born into, what economic status, you're stuck there forever. My family didn't like that. My parents had no opportunities for themselves. And so they thought that it might be better for them to take the chance, take their young, small children out from that country of Korea, where I was born, and try different countries. And as a result of traveling around the world and my father doing his work as a missionary to look for better places, we eventually ended up in the United States of America. And what I realized when I went to college studying political science is that it is true that the United States is the only country in the world who actually tries our best. As imperfect as we are, we still try our best to live up to those ideals and standards. And so what I try to do for the rest of my life, and since college, was to put that to the test. See if the words in the books, see if those ideals that we read about, can it actually happen? And more importantly, do those ideals hold true for people that look like me? People like us as Asian immigrants who didn't come to this country until after the 1965 immigration law was passed. People like us who never had a seat at the table in Congress or in Washington or at state houses or governor's offices. Is there a promise for us to have a seat at that table too? And just like what you heard from my colleagues who are trailblazers, we all decided that if we don't do it, maybe we'll just sit around waiting for somebody else to do it. So we thought, as imperfect as we may be as the vehicles of change, why don't we step up and try to make that change happen, and hopefully, you know, inspire and allow for other people to also enter. And as a result, I am so proud to see now we have a record number of Asian Americans holding office all around the country, from the highest levels to the entry level of government. We have staff, we have lobbyists, we have media personalities, we have pundits, we have so many good people that are trying to help influence American policy. And that's what it should be about. So I look forward to this conversation where we can share some ideas about what we have done and what we can do to help others that aspire to work in this field. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Kim. And you said it so well. I think it is a broader spectrum, not just running for office, but there are so many levels that we need to be engaged in. And it's great to see Asian Americans doing that now. And you also brought up a really good point. I think that is the common quality of the immigrants. People who step out of the box, that are willing to step up to the plate and do something they've never done before, moving to a new country, being a stranger in a strange land and trying to succeed. So that is a beautiful, beautiful, theme for all of us here and all immigrants. So thank you for your words. So next we have another first, Delegate Suha Subramaniam, the first Indian American to be elected to Virginia's House of Delegates, as well as the first Hindu American ever to be elected to the Virginia General Assembly. Delegate Subramaniam.
Thank you for putting this together. Thank you to everyone who's here. It's really a lot of familiar faces and amazing leaders here in the area. And I hear about other people's stories and their call to service. And, in some ways it's similar. I come from an immigrant family as well. My family moved to this area in the Dulles Airport area in Northern Virginia, where I represent, in the late 70s. There was an influx of immigrants here and from South Asia. And I think what has made our area so great is the diversity, not just from the Asian American community, but all over the world that has come to Virginia. It's made us great. A lot of these communities have community leaders who have done so much great for the community. But myself, growing up, my parents actually de-emphasized politics and getting involved in government service because where they came from, there was a lot of corruption, and being a politician was seen as sort of a self-serving thing, where you're out to kind of enrich yourself in some ways. And for better, perhaps it wasn't a little unfair, but that was certainly their experience with their local officials. And so, that was part of the reason why my parents moved here, is because they wanted to have careers without having to bribe people at their school to just get a transcript to apply for a graduate school, things like that. And so, I somehow bucked I'm the black sheep of my family. I didn't go into the medical world. I wanted to work knock doors for a campaign at a college. I went to school in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit the city and caught the public service bug. And I had the opportunity to work at every level of government. I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked in the White House under the Obama administration. But I found that the state legislature, the General Assembly here has been very rewarding because you get to help people on a very close basis directly. My district happens to be the largest district population-wise in Virginia. It's doubled in size since it was first drawn in 2011, and because of all the people moving here. And so we get double the constituent service requests, double the emails, but we love the work that we do to help people, whether it's getting their unemployment benefits, whether it's help with the DMV, and that has been the most rewarding thing. And I would say that if you're someone who's never knocked doors before or been an activist in any sort of way, or maybe even passed out flyers at the supermarket or gotten people to get on the ballot, you'll find the first couple of times maybe it seems like a slog, but eventually you'll see how rewarding it is and what a difference you can make. The people who helped elect me, still to this day I'm calling them, asking them to help with the legislative things I'm working on, with public service things. Just the other day, I called someone who had knocked doors on me, and I told them, we need someone on this commission, Virginia Commission, and I think you would be great. And they never thought of themselves as someone who could serve. But when you get involved, you'll catch the bug like I did, and like everyone else in this call did. So I'm very happy, excited to be here, excited to be serving with all of you, and I look forward to the questions and the discussion today.
Thank you, Delegate Subramaniam. And, we're so glad that you are the black sheep of the family and you're there to be able to defend all the Virginians in your district. So thank you. And, for any of elected officials to have the great opportunity to run for office and to have the incredible privilege of being elected, it takes a whole nother community to make that happen. And one of the leaders of that community is one of my dear friends, Paul Tiao. He is deeply respected, a community activist, expert attorney on cybersecurity, and a fierce community leader fighting against hate and making sure that Asian American Pacific Islanders get a seat at the table. Paul?
Wow, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I probably should say nothing at this point and just leave it at that, but I guess I'm being called upon to speak, so I'll say a few words. It is really a privilege and an honor for me to serve on this incredibly distinguished panel. All of you, and Aruna, you as well, in your capacity as an elected official and in your current capacity as a community leader, all of you have contributed so much in public service. And when I first got involved in politics 21 years ago, there were just so few of you. Senator Lee, you were one of the first to run for office way back in the day. Delegate Kim, I think you followed a little bit later, and you were trailblazers, but each of you, Delegate Subramaniam and Senator Hashmi, all of you are just trailblazers, and we're so privileged to have you as leaders, as visible public leaders, fighting the really important fights. The political battles now are so important, and I think that Mark said it really well. We have to have good people, rational people, people that believe in science, people that believe in democracy in our election systems, and people that believe in inclusiveness and fairness leading our country and leading our states. And each of you do a great job of doing that. We're very lucky to have you. I think that I'm here like the one person that is here probably not so much to speak about sort of what you can do as an elected official, but about what you can do as a community activist. And so I know that all of the elected in this panel have previously been community activists and community leaders, and that's why it is that you were elected, because of your leadership in the community. But now that you're an elected official, people want to hear about that. So I'm going to talk about sort of what I've been doing sort of at a community level. Professionally, yes, I'm very privileged to be a partner at Hunter Andrews Kurth, where I handle cybersecurity issues, help manage data breaches for Fortune 500 companies, and it's a really, really interesting field, and I'm very privileged to be in that. I've been there for 8 years, and that's after spending 16 years in the federal government at the Department of Justice, as a federal prosecutor, as a senior advisor to the FBI director, and then working in Mark Hume's old shop in the Senate Judiciary Committee as the counsel to the Judiciary Committee. So professionally, I've been very fortunate to serve in sort of roles where I think that I can make a difference. Maybe not as visible as the elected, but still it's important to be in public service. And I certainly encourage any of the folks out there, the young people, the students, to do public service in whatever capacity you get the opportunity, whether you're running for office or you're serving as a government employee or a civil servant in the state or federal government. On the community side, I really focused on in sort of two things: Asian American empowerment, and then also community unity, sort of bringing people together across different communities. And I really feel that both are very important, and they're sort of labors of love for me, and they're a passion for me. So one, Aruna mentioned the Asian American Action Fund. That's a group that we started 21 years ago, and Mark and Susan, you are both sort of people that advised us as we got that going way back in the day in 1999. And you know, thanks to your advice and the advice of other sort of distinguished people in the community, we got it going. And what it does is it focuses on AAPI empowerment, principally, at least initially, on getting people like the folks here on this panel elected. And so either the national group or our chapters have supported each of you at some point in your careers, usually early on, before as you're sort of just getting into politics. And then after you're sort of established as an incumbent, we tend to focus on other folks that need more help. But you know, that is, I mean, it is incredible what I've seen in terms of the growth of the numbers of Asian American elected officials. Way back in the day when we started in 1999, there were 5 AAPI members of Congress. Now there's 20. There were 4 AAPI members of the California State Assembly back then. Now there's dozens. And so we made tremendous strides, but our community remains largely inactive in politics. And so we're the least involved, and the studies have shown that we are the least involved in politics of any racial or ethnic community. That's changing thanks to the leaders here, and then some wonderful groups that Aruna has been involved in, and that each of these electeds have supported. But that community engagement is crucial. It's crucial. We have to be in the trenches, fighting those fights, helping these folks get elected, and also just winning the political battles. And so that's a lot of what the AAA Fund has been about. We've created chapters all over the country. We've endorsed over 200 candidates over the years. We've raised millions of dollars. We've created a clearinghouse that brings together about 35 organizations from around the country, none of which existed 20 years ago. But now we're a more maturing community, and it's very exciting to see where our community has come from and where it's going. And I think that we're hitting an age now where we're really, really establishing a voice. The other thing that I do is Community United State. I'll be quick about this, but this is a group that I started 4 years ago with the instrumental help of Senator Lee. We brought together a group of leaders from across the sort of the community, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, African American, Latinos, Asian Americans, faith-based institutions, to address hate together and to build a network where we can work together. And and I know this is one of the issues that Aruna is going to want to mention or hit later on, but it is crucial that we work across communities to fight these common challenges. We all have our differences. We all need to respect those, but it's crucial we fight together where we do find that common ground. And there's a lot of common ground for the people that are, frankly, rational out there. So, so what this group does is it brings groups together, and it has an amazing young person's program called Youth Creating Change. It's a national program now that is a social justice incubator to provide student activists with grant funding, with mentorship, with training and public recognition for the work that they do. And they're from across the spectrum working together to fight against discrimination of all sorts, climate change, gun control, and other social issues. So I hope that gives you a sense of at least what my passions are, and I really encourage everyone out there to be involved in the community in whatever capacity they can, because we need your help.
Paul, you said it so well. You're absolutely right. Your passion came through. And yes, we need everyone to be engaged in this process of turning, the next chapter of our country and making it a more inclusive and equitable place for all. So thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do. So the next question we have is, and many of you have already touched upon this, and for some of you, that was the reason why you got involved. The past 4 years have led Americans to be more politically and culturally estranged from one another. And at the heart of that divide is race. but Asian American voices are growing louder and stronger and calling for an end to hate and bringing hope for a more united future. What do you see as some key opportunities for intersectional activism and coalition building? Now I'm going to go in a different order. Paul, I'm going to ask you to talk about it because I know you're an expert in this region. And just to expand a little bit more about the work you do in coalition building.
I think there's a lot of, it's a great question. It's crucial to, I think, the survival of our democracy. And I think that there's a tremendous threat to the country right now from far right-wing forces and just rampant disinformation. So I think that there's a couple things. One, I think you need to fight with power. And two, I think you need to build bridges. And those two things are not mutually exclusive. You have to have power because these days, if rational, reasonable people that believe in inclusiveness and believe in a fair and accurate media are not in power, then they are abusing power to prevent people from getting accurate information, and they're just spreading disinformation about COVID, about climate change, about critical race theory, about discrimination, about women's issues, about abortion. And I emphasize that it's a little bit off point from your question, but I just don't think that you can have effective dialogue if you don't have some measure of power. And I think that the folks on this panel that have stepped up to run for office and have the talent, the dedication, and the luck, frankly, to get elected, and then to use that platform to make sure that we have sensible policies that are inclusive, that we are holding our sort of executive branch leaders accountable, and that we are promoting and educating the public about the need for important policies that you believe in. That's crucial. The other piece is building those bridges. You have to find ways to do that, and it's really hard work. You know, the Community United Against Hate, we spent, and Senator Lee was part of this, and Arun, I think you actually came to some of the meetings as well, but we spent 6 months working across the community to try to figure out what we needed to do to really fight hate effectively. And that, it was an amazing process. We started out with the 15 people that Susan and I pulled together, and then it grew to about 100 people after about 6 months. And we built Communities United Against Hate based on a foundation of really thoughtful, strategic thinking about what the community needed and how we could build bridges. And then we have continued to look for those opportunities. You have to really think intentionally about how to build a dialogue, who to bring to the table, how to create a platform, a project, a set of activities that allow people to really engage, because these are hard things to share about. And our communities are so diverse now. We used to think in terms of black and white, and now we're trying to stretch people to think about black, white, brown, and yellow, you know, and then you realize you throw like LGBTQ, and you throw in gender issues, gender ID, you know, sexual orientation, you just throw all these different issues into the mix, and you realize that you can't just pigeonhole people into certain boxes. You know, people have very different perspectives based on their religious faith, their gender identity, their sexual orientation, their race, their ethnicity, and all these things. So you have to bring people together and understand that viewpoints are incredibly diverse and incredibly nuanced. And the only way for people to build bridges is to actually work together and understand that people can be, you know, one race and feel very differently about an issue, even though they're of that same race, right? And so I think that that's the key, is looking for those opportunities and being thoughtful about and sort of consistent. And that's a lot of Kua is about, is trying to create that platform so people can continuously work together, not just a one-off, not an ad hoc, but a continuous effort that is structured and built in so it becomes part of the program.
Thank you, Paul. Well said. Now, even amongst our Asian American communities, we have a lot of diversity, right? Asians represent close to 60% of the world's population. We have, you know, we come from numerous different countries, speak different languages, you know, follow different faiths. So with that, Delegate Subramaniam and Senator Hashmi, I'd like the both of you to talk a little bit about your experience as far as trying to reach out to whether it's the Indian American community or even, faith-based organizations, trying to get them to come together on trying to build this, broader coalition building. Delegate Subramanian, could you go first, please?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of the work I've done in the past couple of years is trying to get people in the South Asian community to just get active, get involved, and be more outspoken on the issues. I would say that an endeavor like that, there's no silver bullet or magic trick. It is just straight up hard work. It's going door to door in these communities. It's going to all of the community events, passing out flyers in places where they don't like you to pass out political flyers, but we're going to do it anyway sometimes. And I think that especially, it was disheartening to see as the first Hindu-American elected. Before I was elected, it was always kind of a common trope that, there's a lot of Hindu Americans here, but the people who, go to the temples or, talk a lot about politics and social, arenas, they've come out for the presidential elections. They don't really come out for the other elections. They are very passionate about issues like education, but then they don't show up to the school board meetings. And so, I think one of the great things about trying to get people involved in those arenas is they're finding that their voice actually matters. And I think once people see that, that instant gratification almost, sometimes it's gradual, but sometimes it's instant, they start to come to more things. They start to get more involved in other areas. So I think I will say that even among the Indian American community, but certainly among all Asian Americans, it's not, building a cohesive coalition is very difficult. I think there's quite a few Trump voting Indian Americans in my area, for instance, and who, I think they have single issues that don't necessarily line up with our issues, but when you talk to them about the fact that, okay, there's only one group that's talking about getting people vaccinated. There's only one group that's talking about getting tests out, building our economy up, and rebuilding the right way. That's when you start to see, some people say, okay, well, maybe my taxes are a little high sometimes, I feel, but in the end, like, I do want my community to be safe. I do want to fund public schools. So sometimes there is some persuasion still involved. It's not as easy as simply just showing up. And especially if you're Asian American, sometimes, as I think others on the call know, that your own community can be your toughest critics, and I'll knock on the door of an Indian American who will grill me for 10 minutes, whereas a non-Indian American would not have done that in the same situation. So it's hard work, but I see it happening. I know Senator Hushmi and Delegate Keem and many others in Virginia have done it as well, and are doing it successfully. And then I continue to look forward to seeing the fruits of that labor.
But thank you. And I know exactly what you're talking about amongst our Indian American community. They can be truly very generous and very encouraging, but yes, they will grill us. And, quite honestly, I think everybody should grill us, right? If we're going to take the effort to represent them, they have a right to ask us a lot of questions. Senator Hushmi, so why don't you talk a little bit about, again, the coalition building, and why is it difficult to get our community out there to vote, right? As Delegate Subramanian said, that they get excited about the national elections, but not so much about the state and local election. Now, I'm going to guess a part of that has to do with the fact that when they don't see people that look like them, it's a less likely chance that they're going to get out and actually vote. So what's been your experience?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. And I think Paul outlined really effectively the ways in which we have to really work to build bridges and to establish this conversation across so many different communities. And all of us on this panel understand what it's like to be just lumped together into one generic community, whether it's the Asian American community or South Asian community. But we know intrinsically that there are such deep divisions within our own communities. I'm one of those odd birds. I am a Muslim, but I'm Indian. And a lot of times when folks think about Indian Americans, they don't recognize the fact that there is a substantial Muslim population in India. I'm also an odd bird in that my father was Pakistani. So I have both Pakistani and Indian background and the necessary need to build bridges across those different communities is essential. So I hope that one thing I can represent as well as so many others on this panel is the way in which we become uniquely American by the time we have established families here, when our children grow up here, and that by being American, we are in a position to build those bridges, to really shape our identity around core values rather than the issues that separate people back home, but to build our values around the democratic principles, the identity that we have as American citizens, and the ways in which we really see ourselves as representing that tremendous large immigrant community that's around us, whether we come from South Asia or from Latin America or from Europe. At the end of the day, we are all Americans. And one thing that I've found is that it's through our faith communities that we really have an opportunity to build those bridges. The work of our interfaith communities as being one of the most critical, active, and very generous in terms of openness to lending itself to inclusive values. And it's through those commonalities that we find the ground to speak collectively and to articulate what's really important for us. And I think each of us is in a unique position to continue to help foster that conversation across these many different divisions that often are part of our identities.
Thank you, Sarah Hashmi. Well said. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of uniqueness in our communities, but at the end of the day, we're all Americans and we need to collectively come together. So thank you for doing your part in that. So we are kind of limited on time here. So I'm going to go to the next question, which is, how has your heritage shaped the person you are today, coupled with being undeniably an American? Delegate Keem.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. And just picking up on the conversation, the thread that we're hearing throughout, race is clearly a factor in America, and there's no way we can avoid it. I mean, we in the Commonwealth of Virginia are in some ways fortunate because we had a front row seat to America's history being written from 1619 on. And unfortunately, the same month that we started the General Assembly and practicing democracy in America was the same month that we brought the first enslaved people from Africa. And since then, the original sin of America and the slavery happened in our Commonwealth, just steps from where we serve in the General Assembly. So we're always reminded that race is always going to be a part of our history, whether it's our own individual heritage or as we perceive other people and the stupid stereotypes that the media and others create that divide us. And I would answer it this way. For me, I can't avoid being Asian because that's who I am. I was born this way. And I'm also Korean by birth and by original nationality, but I'm an American in my heart. And the reason why I think that's important is because politics can be practiced two ways. You can practice politics by addition or division. And by dividing, what you say is there are so many people that are not like us. Therefore, when they're more of them, they're taking something away from us. And that fear, the idea that we have something that we're going to lose if these other people grow, whether it's economics, whether it's morality, whether it's culture, whether it's history, whatever it is. So there's one group that says politics should be about division. Let's divide up. point out those wedge issues, find a way for us to gin up our base and increase our pot, and then shrink the other side. Politics of addition is the opposite, that says, you know what? I may be Asian, I may be Korean, I may be a male, I may be a Christian, whatever it might be, but I have absolutely nothing against others that are not. And in fact, I find so much in common with those that are not. Therefore, if you look for that common ground, whether it's faith or religion or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden we have friends, we have more friends, we build a coalition together. So when you practice politics of addition, you're constantly increasing your base and reducing the amount of wedge issues. So I think as Asian Americans, and my personal philosophy has always been to practice that politics of addition, which means that no matter who I meet, whether he or she may be from a complete opposite end from me politically, I'm going to look for that common ground, because the moment I find that common ground, I can make that person be something that I can be of help, and vice versa, as opposed to if we start off by saying, well, that person's white, or that person's black, or that person's Hispanic, and I have nothing, or that person's of a different gender than me, or different identity, therefore I have nothing to do with that person, then you missed out on the opportunity to build that coalition. So for me, the idea of my Asian heritage as my Korean heritage is that by nature, I have to look for common ground with other people, because there's not enough of me, but there's plenty of others that I share values with and morality with. And that, to me, the politics of addition is what makes at least my party stronger in this country. And I think America becomes a better country when we practice e pluribus unum.
Thank you, Delegate Keem. Yes, you're absolutely right. Every one of us have a certain look. There's nothing we can do about that. We embrace it. It is part of our heritage. But again, there's so much more that we can accomplish when we are united together, as opposed to divide and conquer mentality, as you mentioned, that politics can be divided into. So thank you for your words. Senator Lee, I have a very important question for you. How do we encourage our AAPI youth to participate and consider public service from the early onset? Are there opportunities in your office for our youth?
Yes, there are. In fact, I have an internship program. And it's important that our youth be educated about our American political process, but also give them a firsthand experience in how our laws are formulated and made, and how important it is to include our community's input in those particular pieces of legislation. Just recently, there was an article on Asian American participation in the Washington Post. And I was so excited when they included my interns in that too, not just their photograph of them canvassing with me in Bethesda, but also their particular views of why it was important to get involved in politics. I was so proud of them, my heart just burst. And I think the more we get our youth involved in, in internships like the one I have, the better it is, because even if they don't go into politics, they'll become better citizens later on, better social workers, better educators, better lawyers like us, and better doctors too, and just better everything. And so it gives them a foundation to go out and be our next generation of leaders, because they will be. I am so certain that they will be. I have seen, since I've been in elected office, some of my alumni interns that go on to become like social activists, but also in the field that our Asian moms and dads wants is doctors too. But they're better doctors for that too. Social workers and also educators. And so I think it's important that we give these opportunities to our youth so they have that foundation to realize their fullest potential and yes, be our next generation leaders and perhaps our next president. Hey, we just recently got, and I'm wildly excited, a vice president who is not only Black, but she's Asian American and she's a woman. And as an Asian American woman, we bring our own life experiences to the office, because we are not only in tune with the issues of our particular district, county and state and the country, but we are also in tune with the issues and challenges impacting women, immigrants, people of color, and people of all different backgrounds. And when you include these multi-perspectives and real life experience in the formulation of our laws, you make for very better laws. And government truly work for all our people. And the Maryland legislature, I have to say, I'm proud to say, is getting more diverse, with the third being about having women about a third of us are women, and we have a strong women's caucus and a number of people of color and from diverse backgrounds and different faiths increasing. And they, I see, are the new face of America and also Maryland. And of course, our American history is incomplete without including the contributions of people of all different backgrounds. And our history has been very incomplete as of today. So this session, I just wanted to shout out a bill that I'll be introducing in the 2022 session to allow our educational curriculum to include the history of people of all backgrounds, particularly the history and contributions of AAPIs, Latinos, Blacks, Native Americans, and women. This is very important. You know, America, our country, is so unique in its rich diversity, but there are so many things that we have in common as Americans. And so we all have to work together. We in our Asian American caucus, we're working very closely with the Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, Women's Caucus to make better laws. In fact, we've passed great laws like when other states are trying to limit voting rights, we in Maryland have passed laws to expand voting rights, like greater number of early voting sites in general, and the ability to easily vote by mail, which is, we want to be participants. And just recently, we strengthened our hate crimes law to amend the standard, because the standard we had in the state was so impossible to prove a hate crimes case. And now we have made the standard better so that we can prevail in a case dealing with hate crimes. And also, just this year, we dealt with police reform. We worked very closely, all the caucuses worked very closely to pass significant police reform. So anyway, I'm very delighted to serve in the legislature, and I encourage young people to get involved so they can run for office, and they can also help us join together with all people of all different communities to make this a better world. Thank you, Aruna, again, for that question.
Thank you, Senator Lee. And I'm so excited about the legislation you're about to introduce. You're absolutely right. We need to start early, and we need to start in the schools and really have a fair and equitable teaching about all our cultures. So thank you for taking that on. So as we conclude our program, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us. And thank you to the panelists for the robust discussion and for your leadership and words of wisdom that you shared. And to remind everyone that coming together and building unity isn't just a responsibility for those who are in the lane of policy making, it's up to all of us. Have a great weekend, and let's continue to build an America, not for what it was, but for what it can be. Thank you.